Okay, my name is Ron Carrico, and I'm a docent with the San Diego Air and Space Museum. And today we're interviewing Brad Carter, who is a pilot of the infamous or famous DR-1 dry-decker Fokker airplane. So why don't we start off, and you can tell me your full name.
Brad Carter.
And where are you from?
I live in Rockland, Maine. I moved here.
How long have you been flying the triplane?
This is my second year flying the triplane.
And at this point, how many times have you actually flown it?
I'll go out on a limb and say it doesn't.
Okay. And how do you find it to fly?
It's actually a delight to fly. It's fun.
So let's ask some specifics here. This does not have the original Oberusel motor in it.
No, this is a Werner Scarab, 160 horsepower motor, I believe. Radial engine, not a rotary.
And how many horsepower does it have?
160.
And in your experience, let's talk about start, taxi, takeoff. How do you actually start it?
On this one, we're using an external power source to start it. It does have an electric starter. We have hand propped it on several occasions. But, we don't need to. It starts normally for a radial. You want to pull the propeller through a few times and make sure there's no oil in the bottom cylinders. Prime it. It starts pretty handily.
And it runs on avgas?
Runs on avgas.
It has no brakes.
Right.
So what do you do to keep it steady or still when you've started the engine up?
We generally fly with a crew here. We have people to pull the chocks out from the airplane, hold the wings while we run it up. And we do that with just about all the airplanes.
Okay. Does it have twin plugs?
Yes, it does.
So
Full mags.
how do you do a mag check? Do you go to full power to do a mag check then?
About 1700, and we keep the chocks in and have people holding the wings back here. So we'll have one on each side, and the chocks will be in front of the wheels.
And that's sufficient to hold it in place?
Yes.
So now your runway here runs which directions?
Well, 2, 1, 3,
Okay.
and 31 and 13. So that's 310 degrees.
Okay, so you have you just take off in the grass though.
Yes, we have grass runways on both, though.
Oh really? And so how do you steer it on the ground?
Steering on the ground, with all the tail skid airplanes, we've discovered that using adverse yaw is more valuable than you might believe.
Okay, why don't you try explaining adverse yaw?
All right, when you throw the stick over to the right, the aileron on the left side is going down to make those wings do that. But on the ground, all it's doing is going down and being a barn door. And on the left, that aileron's coming up very little, not much at all. And so that wing is not going to turn or move as readily as the wing with the...
So you put in opposite aileron,
Yeah.
and then you put in the proper direction for the rudder.
Proper direction rudder. You cross-control it.
Okay. And so now you pull onto the runway. What do you do?
Well, let's think about it. Do we want to go back to the cockpit and take a look? Or? We've already got the plane running, obviously. This is the throttle on the original Fokker, and it's awkward. That part is very awkward. There's another throttle down on the left side I cheat and use. So it's more of what you're used to. The stick is a big, as you can see, that's all going to move when we release the seatbelt. And that's quite a bit on one stick, particularly for an airplane this age. They tended to have just a little loop and a gun button, but we've got 2 gun buttons here.
2 gun buttons?
Yeah, one for the right, one for the left, and then actually we had, this would be both, I believe, originally.
Those aren't real guns, are they?
No. They look good, though.
Where'd they get the stick, though?
I think they made it up. I was thinking this looks a lot like a screwdriver I used to use in old days, but they got the idea for it out of the drawings, I'm sure, from the original German drawings.
Okay, but now there's a mixture control too, isn't there? Or wouldn't there have been a mixture control?
Not on the original plane. It would have been a fuel control and an air control, not really mixture, not really carburetor or throttle. This would have controlled one of them. and the other one probably was down in the way. I don't really know.
Yeah. So what other instruments are there up there?
On this one, we've got an altimeter and we've got an airspeed indicator. The airspeed indicator seems to be relatively normal. The altimeter is in meters, which is unusual for me to get used to. So I tend to fly around the pattern at a couple 100 meters instead of at the 1,000 feet. I'd normally be flying one of the other airplanes.
So you say it's metric?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. And
down below we actually have turning the fuel on and off on the side. Instead of on and off, it has ein and auf, which I tried to translate and discovered aren't really words.
So you have oil pressure and was a cylinder head temperature on the left over there?
Yes, and then our tack is way down below in between. That's pretty difficult to find in flight.
Oh yeah, I see what you mean. Oh, and I see there's stirrups for the rudders, so
Yeah.
in case you get upside down and backwards or whatever. Does the windscreen, is it very effective?
Seems to be. I don't feel much wind.
Oh really? Wow. So take us through the takeoff procedure. You taxi out to the end of the runway and then?
Line it up. We've done our run up. The chocks are pulled at that point. Usually we do the run up on the runway, in fact. The chocks are pulled and the people move out of the way. We get a signal from our local control tower, which is a flag waving back and forth saying that nobody else is reported on the radio, so we can go. And I add power fairly slowly with the stick all the way forward.
And the reason for that?
I want the tail to start grabbing a little bit before it lifts.
Okay. And once it lifts off, do you pay any attention to the airspeed? I mean, the tail comes up, and then what do you do from there?
The tail comes up. I usually keep it on the ground a little bit and start looking for 70 or 80 on the airspeed over here.
70 or 80 miles an hour?
Well, whatever that is, yeah.
Probably kilometers, what do you think?
It could be.
Yeah.
And then it goes very nicely. Climbs in the air. It looks like a Venetian blind being raised when it goes up in the air. It's just wings and half wings down there going almost 45-degree angle in a sort of a flattish attitude. It's not necessarily pointing up.
So, but that's what these were supposed to do, is be able to climb like crazy because of the 3 wings.
And they do.
Or should I say 4 wings?
3.5, we'll call it.
3.5, yeah, okay. There's a wing down below as well, as you can see in the picture here. So, they made 320 of these babies. I don't...
The fellow who built this one and donated it to the museum, Ken Cianchette.
Can you spell his last name, please?
No.
How do you say it again? Say it slow.
Cianchette, or some people say Cianchette, but I've always called it Cianchette.
So he's now...
He's 84 or 5 now, and no longer flies this airplane. I believe he's still flying. But he donated it to the museum, and he flew it for 30 to 40 years. So he had quite a bit of time in it, was where I was going with that.
And he used to really ring it out, too.
He used to ring it out. He would do loops and spins right after takeoff.
So normal cruise speed that you fly at around the pattern here?
It shows about 100. So.
And at 100 knots or whatever they are, what would be the radius of turn if you decided to really honk it around?
It would be very, very tight.
Like?
Not 100 yards. It'd be maybe 50 yards at the most.
No kidding.
Yeah.
No kidding.
You'd be very sick, but it'd be aerobatic feeling. You know.
So have you ever done any aerobatics in it?
No.
Never had it upside down?
Nope, I haven't. Ken did, but I never did.
Yeah. That's probably smart.
It actually is a delight to fly. It's not one of those airplanes you dread getting into. You kind of keep an eye out for the landing. That's the part that everybody's...
Well, let's talk about the landing. Let's go. I'm going to get a little of the glare out of here. So let's talk about the landing procedure.
Generally, it's coming in again at about 80 indicated, and then crossing the fence. I find I'm adding power when I land and doing a wheel landing, and it's very comfortable. I've never wheel landed an airplane that felt better while it was doing it than this one.
Now, the problem they had, or the advantage they had in World War I was big open fields,
Right.
big windsock, and knew where the wind was coming from.
Right.
Here you're restricted to pretty much down whatever selected grass runway, so you don't fly it in crosswinds apparently.
We don't fly it in a very strong crosswind. I've flown it with maybe 15, 20 degrees across.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And how do you handle that?
It does handle it just fine with the tail up. I keep the tail up until it's going very, very slow and then let it down. And it, again, doesn't seem to have an issue once the tail is up.
How do you stop it?
You plan your stops. It's going to stop when the tail skid starts dragging into the ground. And that's it. You just don't be up against anything that you need to stop.
So it's not like you have to yank back on the stick to plant the thing in the ground. It just stops on its own.
I will be yanking back on the stick. Once I've decided the tail's coming down, the stick
Okay.
comes all the way back.
All right, so you put a bunch of weight
Force
back
as I
there.
got, yeah.
Anything strange ever happened to you flying this airplane?
No, I can't say anything strange has happened to me flying this.
That's good news,
Yeah,
isn't
it
it?
is. It is. It's always run well. It does ground handling. You can actually turn it around on the ground by yourself, which is a lot of people would tell you that's not that easy, but you can.
So you're adverse yaw and add the gas and around it goes, huh?
Yeah, you have to really start from a standing stop if you want to turn it 180 degrees.
Does it turn one way better than the other?
I haven't noticed that.
Okay, now you've flown other airplanes that have had big rotary or radial engines in them.
Yes.
And is there a problem with the turning in and out of turns? In other words, if you establish a left-hand turn, it'll turn fairly well, and then what happens if you want to come out of the turn?
The one in particular that we have the most history with and the most trouble with is the standard J1. You'll start and that has a V8 Hispano Suiza 150 horsepower. You'll start a left turn and it'll go into it very nicely, readily. And then you'll go to get out of it and realize that you're not going to get out with just rudder, and you've really got to throw the aileron way over, and it takes two hands really on the aileron to bring it back.
Wow.
And that does depend on how fast you're going, whether you're pointing down or up, but it's quite a bit of force to bring it out of a left turn.
Maybe
right turn, it's completely docile coming out.
So right turn is easy to get out because you're turning left. I mean, that's the thing I've read so many times about these World War I rotary motor airplanes is you could turn it, I think, Carl said you could turn it 270 degrees to the left faster than you can turn it 90 degrees to the right.
Yeah, and that was true with the higher horsepower, like the Sopwith Camel is the one most famous for that.
Right.
Was, I think 220 horsepower, I'm not sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the Sopwith Pup you guys have, it's not such a big deal, I guess.
It's not such a big deal.
And then, going back to we were discussing earlier, the whole shoot down of Baron von Richtofen in April the 21st, 1918. There's always a controversy about whether or not he was shot down by ground fire or Captain Brown flying a...
SE-5.
Was it an SE-5 or was it the...
A Camel. You might be right.
It was a Camel. Yeah, I think it was a Camel. Yeah. Which I found a video that really compared the two, and they thought that the Camel really had the advantage.
It's interesting that by the time the Camels were out, this plane was built in, I think, June of 1917. They started building these. That's my phone, not yours. Oh. They started building these in June of 1917. And by April of 1918, it was obsolete. It was a very maneuverable airplane, but the Camel was much faster. The Camel was equally maneuverable in at least one direction because it could turn to the left. So, I believe it was the left.
Well,
the Camel was about 15 miles an hour faster than this airplane. So he should have probably banked away gently and just laid the power on.
And gassed it, yeah. But then but so anyway, then it says Brown rolls in, sees him, dives on him, fires, and pulls up to the left and doesn't know what happened. All he said is, I fired on a red airplane. And Brown never would talk about it. he said, all I know is I fired on a red airplane. May said he got von Richtofen. People say that it was probably shot from the ground because the bullet entered in his right hand chest down low and ended up on his left side, up under the nipple on his left side, indicating ground fire. The trouble is, with a highly maneuverable airplane like this, Richtofen, seeking to escape, and an airplane that turns left really well, could have yanked the thing around to the left and shown the bottom of the airplane to the guy.
Yeah, easily.
Yeah.
I think the fellow's name is Popkin, who was on the ground claiming to have also, but there was, they'd mapped it out fairly carefully, and there were at least 5 gun emplacements he flew over, and Popkin was the one closest to when he
But they never talk about his altitude.
Yeah, he was down low.
Yeah, and then they say, I was trying to figure it out last night. I mean, the muzzle velocity of the Enfield 303 was 2750. And the Fokker was probably doing 100, yeah. Right? So in feet per second, that's 168 feet per second. And they've said he fired from 600 yards, and the evidence is from the amount of damage it does to gel when they fire into it. A 303 would make about the same amount of damage from 600 yards. Do you know how far you'd have to lead that guy?
No.
About 200 feet.
Yeah, believe it.
You'd have to shoot way in front of him, 150 to 200 feet to hit him. So what it comes down to is Popkin was probably a lousy shot.
Probably. How many holes were in the airplane? I don't even know that.
They never talk about it because when it was
so quickly dismembered.
Yeah, everybody took pieces of it off, which is what they did to all of their victories. You know, which is just weird. I mean, it's kind of like a scalp, isn't it? So, anyway, I can't think of anything else you want to add. What's the most common question you get?
How do you not hit the propeller with the machine guns?
Okay.
That's the most common question. And it was the same people who designed this. Reinhold Platz, the Fokker engineer, actually came up with the first synchronizing gear. It was on a single wing Fokker when he did it.
The Eindecker.
Yeah.
I thought it was Fokker that came up with the interrupter gear.
Yeah, Fokker came up with a lot of stuff that Reinhold Platz actually came up with, including this airplane. This plane was designed by Fokker, Reinhold, and Werner Voss was actually involved.
Have you ever talked to anybody that flew the Sopwith triplane?
Currently?
Yeah.
I believe Andrew King may have. He's flown quite a bit. He's flown any number of these Fokkers, and I believe he may have flown the Sopwith triplane, but I never talked to him about it specifically. How about
you have talked to people that have flown an original triplane with a Lerone or with an Oberusel motor?
I've talked to people who've flown. There are no originals left, and there haven't been since the 1940s. The last one was bombed in Germany, I believe.
I think we had one at our museum that burnt down.
An original?
I think it was. Yeah, that's what I was told. I don't know.
Wow, that's interesting.
We have a real Spad and a real Newport 28. Oddly enough.
Yeah, I'm going to go there.
we got a cool exhibit.
I've talked to people, yes, who have flown the rotary powered version of this, and they have a little more issue. I mean, I've got infinite control over the engine in RPMs, and they obviously didn't.
Well, they have to blip the engine all the time.
Right.
So, are you anxious to fly this up with Pup sometime around here?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
So. If they'll let you.
Well, I think Bob pointed out, trying to keep current in any of these airplanes while flying them for 12 events a year, it's difficult to keep too many pilots current in too many airplanes.
Yeah. In landing, one of your difficulties is the wing is in the way. The center wing is in the way, correct?
Yeah, this plane probably has the worst visibility of any of the planes we have here at the museum for forward visibility in the three-point configuration. Once you get the tail up again, it's really nice to you can keep track of most things.
So I noticed there's a cutout in back of on the center wing. What is that for?
That is so I or whoever's in there can tilt his head down and actually see under here when taxiing with the tail down.
Oh, I see.
That's all it does is allow you to see a little bit. And As I said, I normally three-point land. I only three-point land at this airplane. So I have pretty good visibility for the first part of the landing roll, and I can keep the tail up and taxi for quite a long time if I want to.
How do you know you're not going sideways as you're putting the wing down? Do you look down at the ground and see what the grass is doing as you're going by?
Yeah, you're getting some kind of cues from out here. It's just wider than normally in most airplanes. But all the biplanes here have some degree of blindness in the front when you're landing, so you start doing that.
And on this plane here, when you're actually cruising around, you really can't look straight down very well, can you? The bottom wing's in the way.
Yeah, I haven't really. The plane is so maneuverable. You can turn it to a position where you can see what you want to see and still be going generally where you want to go.
What's the fastest you've ever had it going?
I think it's been about 120 on that indicator.
Yeah. And then the landing speed, what do you think you are when you touch down?
It's indicating something like 70, whatever those things are, knots or.
So you're not sure if it's knots or kilometers.
No, it flies pretty well at that speed, though.
If you decided to really make a max powered takeoff, wanted to get up as quick as you could, how far would it roll on the ground?
Oh, you could probably roll 60, 75 feet, leave the ground, and in fact, Ken used to, if you find some of those old videos, he'd go up at about a 30 or 45 degree angle from that, just hanging on the prop.
Wow. Wow.
And it's pretty impressive to see.
Okay, well, we've been talking for 21 minutes, and my hand is unsteady. So I'm going to stop. Ready, set, go. And again, from Owl's Head, Maine, and the Owl's Head Transportation Museum,